As I've said previously, while some see the first 6 novels as 2 trilogies, since novels 7 through 9 form a trilogy, I personally see them as 3 duologies. The first establishes something, Leviathan's Wake the Protomolecule, Abaddon's Gate the Ring Gate, and then the second delivers upon it, Caliban's War the Protomolecule Weapon, Cibola Burn the Ring Gate Colonies. Nemesis games and the following novel, Babylon's Ashes, do this even more so. They're inextricably linked, perhaps more than any of the preceding novels. As a consequence, I'll be discussing some elements from Nemesis games when we finally do Babylon's Ashes. Nemesis games draws its thematic inspiration from a line in Abaddon's Gate. I've got a lot of past in my past. Consequently, for the first time, the story's 4 POV characters not only include the Rocinante crew, they are in fact the only POV characters. Nemesis games is about making peace with history, even as the last war of the era erupts around them. The purpose of the journey is to show how the 6 of them, these 4 characters plus 2 others, make the Rocinante the island of misfit toys with an engine that it is. Broken people, but like a jigsaw so the broken pieces fit together and make the perfect picture if you need someone to save the human race. Rather than examining the book progressively, we're going to follow it via their POVs. And so we'll begin with Amos. The first thing to say about Amos is, technically he's not Amos. His real name is Timmy. He took the name of Amos off a dead man in order to escape the earth, because that was the most surefire way to escape the criminal cesspool of Baltimore. But at this moment, that's something that no one out there in space knows, or cares about for that matter. Just back there in the ancient past of his youth, in a place no one voluntarily enters and few are capable of leaving. But something is drawing him back there. Word that a woman named Lydia has died. As we learned, Lydia took care of him after his mother passed, and he actually has a tattoo of the woman over his heart, a reminder to ask himself, what would Lydia want me to do? This sheds insight into the relationship of the present, the fact that Amos will take direction from Holden. He sees that the guy aims for the straight and narrow, and that he's someone that you can rely on saying what he means. Amos is aware that he lacks a moral compass, and so borrows one from others. Amos explains to Holden that he needs to head home to take care of final business related to Lydia's passing. As he sees it, either to pay respect for her for passing peacefully, or finding out who did her in prematurely and making them pay for that. He takes the opportunity along the way to vent somewhat on a spaceship gang that is running a protection racket. He refuses to pay them, knowing that this action will make them try to make an example of him. He makes it from Ceres to Luna, and then Luna to Earth, where he's immediately taken into custody and delivered to Christian Avasarala, who is wondering if Holden is up to something, but is prepared to accept his story for the truth. Holden is straightforward, as established. Once released, he finds Lydia's husband, Charles, and after intimidating him, apologizes when he sees the guy is telling the truth and took good care of his wife. She just passed away in her sleep. Satisfied that there's nothing to avenge, he pays respect and then goes to see his old friend Eric, who has been supporting Lydia in her last years. He wants to see to it that Eric will allow Charles to live in that house until he dies. Eric is running a crew in Baltimore now, controlling a huge chunk of real estate, but his upbringing makes it clear that he knows all the angles of all the rackets, and thus how to get in to see his old friend, even if the guy is now a crime boss. By looking at things from Amos's point of view, we are getting a different take on the human dynamics of the solar system. It has always been framed as Belters and Earthers, as if there was a monolithic pair of groups here, all members interchangeable, the former oppressed, the latter the oppressors. But Amos sees no differentiation based upon these distinctions. He sees people like ants that live in the cracks, finding a way to squeeze in, find a spot and survive, or even thrive. Belter or Earther is merely a distinction of who is doing it. The Belters see the Earthers as monolithic, because that's where the oppression comes from. the government and the corporations. In other words, the ones who have power. And they don't want to see that most of the rest of the people on earth not only have no power or benefit from that power, but they are even more oppressed because they're left totally helpless. When Amos mentions some of the terrifying things he's had to deal with, he has to admit that no, none of the things out there in space stand up to how scary the thought is of a life on Basic. A protomolecule monster, death slugs, the slow zone. At least you're living free and dying quickly, not trapped to die a slow death of ennui at best and through exploitation at the worst. After making his way to his friend Eric and making clear he has no intention of trying to take over his territory, they strike a deal. Charles keeps the house and Amos keeps out of Baltimore. The final act for Lydia of seeing to her husband ties up the last connection that Amos has to this planet. There will never be a personal reason for him to return here ever again. But he does realize that there is one other person who might never have a chance to see him. Clarissa Mao, the woman who had tried framing Holden as a terrorist and is currently being held in the Pit, an underground prison for those with physical enhancements. Amos arranges with Avasarala to get a chance to visit Peaches, his nickname for her. She'd used the alias Melba, so he calls her that after the dessert, Peach Melba. Back when Anna had saved their lives in Abaddon's Gate, she was granted one favor, and what she asked for was forgiveness for Clarissa Mao. As a man who borrows moral compasses, Amos thus took this at face value. He needs to forgive Clarissa? Fine. No baggage, no resentment. That's how it is now. We all have past in our past. This allowed him to see her as someone who, like himself, has realized that she is a monster, and she doesn't like that thought. While Amos resists being a monster by taking cues from those who have proven to be on the righteous path, Clarissa does so by noting that her own fear means that she can't be one, because monsters aren't afraid. Clarissa is the upside down of Amos, born to everything and losing it all, him born illegally and gaining a small fortune. Yet still, he can't resist thinking about trying to break out of the very prison that he's requested to be allowed to enter, while all Clarissa wants is to look again upon the blessed sky. Ironically, the sky is anything but that right now. As he waits to see her, Amos hears of an asteroid strike in northern Africa. Soon, another hits the Atlantic. Finally, a third hits nearby. Only being deep underground allows them to survive the strike. With little to do afterwards, Amos and Clarissa discuss the impacts, and Amos notes the burning up of paint that makes the asteroids undetectable to radar, meaning this isn't a freak accident. Someone intended for this to happen. Eventually, Amos and Clarissa convince the guard that this place is not structurally sound, and that with 2 prisoners and a civilian as their wards, the guards are thus duty-bound to make for the surface. It's all the excuse they really need in order to leave. It's difficult going, forcing them to resort to using their guns as crude metal punches, and the other prisoner with them, Komchek, kills one guard when they run out of bullets. When they reach the surface, Amos is nearly killed as well, but Clarissa's intervention saves him. With the assurance to the guard that Amos will watch over the prisoner, she is then free to go off to see her own loved ones, and Amos and Clarissa are allowed to formulate their own plan of action. Already the cloud cover from the ash is cooling things down, and in the bedlam that follows, it's obvious this planet is going to be doomed for years to come. The only answer is for them to escape to Luna. It will not be easy, though, as Amos notes. The thing civilization does is keep people civil. One of the first lessons in its absence is a survivalist that Amos rightly figures is not worthy of surviving. When Amos proposes a trade with the man, instead, he's prepared to just murder Amos and take the water recycler from him. He doesn't even need the water recycler. When he's ready to kill Amos, Clarissa strikes, using her augments to easily kill the man first, and thus they can take some of his weapons, rations, and a pair of his bicycles for the trip north. Clarissa wonders if what they did was wrong, seeing as how he was only tempted to kill Amos because they intervened, with a lie no less. And Amos has to admit that he's bothered not by what they did, but that he's not bothered by what they did. Being away from the others is affecting his sense of right and wrong, and he doesn't like that. They eventually make it back to Baltimore. Despite being along the Atlantic, Eric and many of his people survived in that particular area, and Clarissa explains the plan to them. Her family vacationed on an artificial lake up north. A lot of private estates with their own orbit-capable ships are there, and she knows how to breach security so they can use one to escape the planet. Eric is aghast, seeing no point in leaving behind his criminal empire, but it's Clarissa who understands how it feels to have had everything and then to suddenly realize through no fault of your own, now you have nothing, but to want to pretend that your life is not imploding. After the powerful drug lord finally weeps on her shoulder in the realization his entire life has been washed away by the Atlantic, he and his people bring a helicopter and head north. Around Boston, they're nearly shot down to show the pointless pettiness of people. What possible benefit would there be to kill these people other than just killing for its own sake? This shows again what Amos said. Civilization keeps people civil, and already it's disintegrating around them. They breach the area by sea and discover some of the servants still there, though their recognition of Clarissa avoids the need for bloodshed. But the security force expects payment from the servants now that their bosses have all fled the planet, and Amos and Eric are only able to make them leave for the moment. Together they work on getting the one remaining ship space-worthy, while the servants treat Amos's matter-of-factness about whether they live or die with his dry gallow wit as far as they're concerned, believing him to be their savior. He doesn't believe that they could think that, and yet it is Amos who has pulled these people together. Amos who has gotten them organized to get the ship working. Amos who has fought off the security forces when they returned. Amos who carried someone wounded off the battlefield into safety. And Amos who brought together this disparate group from a broken Earth and to the safety of its satellite. He is operating on a borrowed conscience, saying he's only doing any of this because he thinks that it's what Holden would do in his place. Yet, does that diminish what he does? In a world where civility is gone, Amos is the one choosing violence as the last resort, and honesty and aid when it's possible. Maybe, when madmen sow terror during the collapse of civilization, sometimes you have to turn to a monster to be the hero.